Hello. Why don't we go ahead and get started? So this evening came out of some requests that I had for more information about the new site and how we're managing the funding and what we're doing to stay the course at this school. So before we start, I thought we could do a little capital campaign 101. So what is a capital campaign? A capital campaign is something you do at a school or a church or a museum or your alma mater or some other institution that's nonprofit, where you try to, you're going to make either a substantial addition to the building, like we are, or a substantial growth in your endowment fund. That's what a lot of schools use capital campaign for. Or they also use, a school that I know in Los Gatos is using their capital campaign to pay off debt they incurred over many years of a bad bookkeeper and they're in a bad situation. So that's what they're doing. But everybody uses it for something different. A capital campaign always has a start and a finish. And once it's done, it's done. It's different than annual fund, which goes on every year. An annual appeal, sometimes an annual fund is also called an annual appeal. So that's how it differs from annual fund. Annual fund at our school is dedicated to the extras or the fluff or the frosting or the things that we want to do. And we could save up for them over time, but it's nice to be able to do good things faster, like buying 3 vans one year instead of buying 1 van, then the next van, then the next van. This year, annual fund went to, I think, 5 field trips for 4 levels. So that was 20 big field trips. Also to send 80% of our staff to the national conference in Denver, which we just did. Has Bowman ever done a capital campaign before? Yes, actually we have. 3 times, as a matter of fact. When we founded the school, we did a capital campaign, but we didn't know that that's what it was called. We called it, we need $80,000 and there's 8 of us. Let's all chip in some money and see what we can do. We did a second capital campaign also, when I fondly refer to that one as the accidental capital campaign, kind of like the accidental tourist. What happened was it was the boom time and people were cashing in back in the days when that was easier to do. And this gentleman had had his kid here for less than a year, promised his wife, once my company goes public, I promise to move you back to Texas. I'm not going to make a comment on that, but I'm not fond of Texas, but that was what her dream was. And so when he did that, we had just begun the conversation about rented space and finding a permanent home. And he walked into our previous heads of school's office, handed her a check and said, buy yourself a building. We're going to Texas. And off they went. And the head of school looked at the check and it was for $1 million. And so that was sort of why I called it the accidental capital campaign, because 2 other families, well, actually 1 family then chipped in again with a second $1 million, and they were divorcing, and not to be outdone by the divorcee, the other parent chipped in 1 cent more. Anyway, so it was a small community back then. And the rest of that $5 million, the 3, I just told you how we got that, the other 2 was just literally fundraised with an email over Thanksgiving weekend. And everybody gave what they could. So this capital campaign that we're doing now is a little bit more thoughtful. We've grown up. We've done some research on how you actually do a capital campaign. And so this is our 3rd capital campaign. So if you think that we're 23 years old and we've really only done 2, not including the very, very first one, about every 10 years we seem to be doing this. So you can be calculating ahead. This will be your only capital campaign at Bowman, unless your child stays at Bowman longer than 10 years. So capital campaigns have 2 phases, the quiet phase, which is what we're in now, and the loud phase, which is what we're about to go in. The quiet phase means that we are sort of loud within our own community. We're talking to every single family, and some schools do it differently than other schools. Some schools use the quiet phase to only solicit funds and talk to parents about giving gifts to really high-end givers, and they kind of leave out the other people, and there's a little bit of sort of messiness around that. Or they have galas where people who can afford to pay a very expensive ticket go and the other people don't get to go, and it's a little divisive. We decided that in our quiet phase we were going to stick to Bowman principles, and every single family was going to get the same sort of conversation and the same attention. The loud phase starts when you'll see a thermometer outside my office on the outside of the wall. You'll start hearing more about it. We'll be having more events. There'll be a lot more things going on. And the loud phase is kicking off with groundbreaking, which is happening on April 22nd. The campaign will last for 3 years. That means we'll nag you, bug you, and hang the thermometer out there, and you'll hear from me, you'll hear from Kiara, you'll hear from our capital campaign people. We'll talk about it and talk about it and talk about it for 3 years, starting April 22nd. So 3 years from then we'll be quiet. We promise. So we all know what we're building, but I want to make sure we all know what we're building. This part of our expansion has three main parts of the campus. We have the gym and the theater. And the theater is in the back. The basketball court in the gym, the volleyball court is there. There's actually also a fourth piece, which is the sunken amphitheater right here. The red building is the children's house or the preschool. It is 2 classrooms that fit 30 kids each, so 60 children will go over there that are ages 3, 4, and 5. And then the yellow building is 2 stories of what we're calling the Idea Lab, which the name of that came from Imagine, Design, Engineer, and Articulate. That's what Idea Lab stands for. And it's the art studio, the wood shop, the science lab, and a tech lab as well, with a sound studio and movie studio and whatever technology brings us 10 years from now. So if you think about our normal school year and how we go to Coverly for sports and we go to Coverly for plays, we go to Los Altos Community Center for dance, for the all-school dance. We go to the church for the music presentation in January. All of that will happen there and more, because we have to rent those and we only get them when we get them. And so we can have a dance every Friday if we want, or music every Tuesday, or we can just have as many things as we want. We can also host our own games. And one of the things when your children get to 5th grade through 8th grade, when you're on the basketball team, that is slightly disappointing is we don't have a home court advantage. And our kids do really well considering that. They make it into the finals considering that. But when we play these other schools, they have everybody there. They got out of school and they walked across the field to their gym and they all sat there and went to it. When we go, we rent Coverly, that's our home court. So people have to drive over there, and who does that? When we have basketball games in the future, the late day kids who are here will walk over and cheer on our team. So it will be much better for everybody involved. So, and then the Idea Lab also has, that amphitheater. And you can't see it from this picture, but the basement floor has all sliding doors that open up, so it's an indoor stage. The exciting thing is, you may have noticed if you drove from Foothill to Bowman today, they are taking the houses down. We're not allowed to demolish until we have our building permits, but in typical city and lawyerly fashion, are allowed to deconstruct. I don't actually understand the difference. But who cares? We're taking them down. Palo Alto is allowing us to deconstruct until the building permit comes through. So some exciting news I have. This is hot off the press. It is official that we are getting our building permits issued this month. March ends, but early April. So that's yay. There's huge delays on the part of the process just from the city with Arastideros Corridor, with fire and traffic having a disagreement about putting trees all down the front and how will the fire truck make a U-turn, lots of practical things like that. We're groundbreaking on April 22nd, which is a Sunday afternoon. We have a lot of exciting things planned. We'll be over there for a little bit, and then we'll all move over here because practically speaking, there are bathrooms over here and there are no bathrooms over there. So we could dig a shovel and then come over here and use the restroom. They're excavating for the Idea Lab during the next few months, and they'll pour the footings. And when they pour the footings, that's one of the things the kids will get to help with. They won't pour the actual footing, but they'll all pour their own little footing, and then their own little footing will get embedded in the building. And they'll write their initials on it. So that's really exciting. December through March, we will be framing the gym, the children's house, and the Idea Lab. They'll do the lighting, they'll do the drywall, they'll do the windows and doors. There's a lot more things on their list that they'll do as well, but these seemed more tangible to me as a mom and as a teacher and as an employee of Bowman and as a person who's interested in this project. And then April to June, they will do all the finishing. Inspections will happen in May, and move-in will happen anytime after that. They are going to walk away from the project in June, as of June 1st. So it's coming really quickly. To put that in sort of Bowman calendar year, next year when we're doing Halloween, they will be doing those first things. We'll be doing all school Thanksgiving. That's just right around the corner. We will be doing things in December and March that we normally do, like science fair and the play and other such things, while we're watching the windows and doors go in. And then in the spring, when we do Founders Day and whatnot, we'll be able to actually have something to see and feel. So let's talk about what Bowman has been accomplishing in the meantime. We have really become a thought leader, and it was never more apparent to me than this last 3 to 5 days I spent in Denver, where people came up to our staff. We had 31 staff at a conference of 3,000. So we were 1% of the conference, which was, you couldn't really not go somewhere and bump into one of us. But the staff was just so impressed, and all day today, they've just come back to my office, and I just got back last night, but they came back throughout the whole day and said, it was so great. I ran into someone and they knew you, or they knew someone else. Everyone knows Bowman. I had no idea everyone knows Bowman. And so that was kind of really exciting. But we're really being touted right now as a thought leader in the Bay Area, but also nationally. Many schools are trying to figure out how to go year round. And our school, they're calling our school as being the one where the president of AMS, the president of IMC are saying, you have to go see Bowman. They're the ones who are doing it the best and the right way. We toured a group of people from a university in Japan that were graduate students in curriculum instruction. I think there were 14 people on my tour. And they are going back with what they took from what we're doing. We have a tour of 24 people in 2 groups, Friday and Monday. Before I go to the airport to take the UK kids, I'm going to be touring a group of teachers from China. China is the fastest growing Montessori country in the world right now. And this woman runs and owns 300 Montessori schools. And she's bringing her teachers to see how to do it the right way. So that's exciting. It's really great to be the Pacific Rim's last stop. If you're going to fly to San Francisco, go to Bowman. I think that's a very exciting thing we should all be really proud of. And we have never really been very good at bragging about ourselves, but I think that you can take that and say, I heard it here. The other thing is we're the only school in the Bay Area that is WASC-accredited, a Montessori school that offers one-time flat fee, sort of the pricing model we have that's using Montessori and is year-round. There's just nobody doing it. And so that is really needed. Like we all need this. The agrarian system of 9-month school is foolish. And so that's the other thing we're really getting noticed for that. So I just wanted to sort of take a moment and be proud of our work. And when I go to these conferences and I run into everybody and they're like, oh, you're from Bowman. The board was talking about you. Oh, you're from Bowman. I've heard of you. And so that's also very exciting and rewarding for all of us. And I go to a lot at these conferences. I'm not there to learn how to use the stamp game. I'm there to promote Bowman in a positive way, but I'm also attending a lot of meetings with other heads and with the board of AMS and networking with them. And to sort of have board members of AMS who serve their terms and run their schools from all over the nation say, Nick, who teaches in middle school, was at my training center, and I was so impressed. How do you keep getting the greatest people? And then someone else said something else nice about the other teachers they met. So that's really empowering and it's very rewarding for me to hear, but it's also rewarding. The teachers should be very proud because the teachers make the school. The other really nice thing that happened in Denver was they had one of the March for Peace, and all of our staff took part in that. So that was really great. They gave it as an option. You could step out and take part in that. So that was really great. So I wanted to just say a few words about our finances, which we should also be really proud of. So we're a non-for-profit corporation, which means we do have a board of trustees. We've always had a board of trustees. We own this property, and that's unheard of in the world of private schools, but also Montessori. We also own these other 2 properties, and we have a mortgage that we have to pay off. That's a fact. We've run in the black for 23 years, also very unusual for a non-for-profit, but also very unusual for a school. And I was just at a school where they were telling me about 5 years ago, they ran out of money in March. And so they had to do the tuition payments and ask everybody to pay more in March. And they wrote this painful letter in March and said, we actually ran out of money, and now we need more of your money to finish the year and pay the teachers. I can't imagine. I find that wickedly irresponsible, and I can't imagine how you could do that. It just seems so normal to me that we would use money we have and not use money we don't have. We have a very small endowment for financial aid, and 23 children are taking advantage of different amounts of tuition coverage. No, we've never had an actual endowment. It's a legal thing. It's not just a fund that you keep. You have to do all kinds of legal things to have an endowment. The long-term goal in our strategic plan is to finish this building, pay for it, and then begin an endowment that is more sustainable financial aid, so we can be offering this to more people or keep our prices lower, and then also have an endowment for things that happen in the future, like the roof leaking and things like that, and just being responsible. But an endowment is our ultimate goal. When we started this school, we wrote a list, and we jokingly called them the Holy Givens, but they are called the key facts of Bowman, and there are 10 things we will never do differently. And so one of them is the year-round school. And another one is to maintain a strong commitment to never put debt on the future of Bowman, because that's just like using a credit card, and it's not fair to the future students of Bowman. There were other things like one flat fee is part of our core values of our school. No, and we'd only ask for money when we need it. And so that's what the capital campaign is about. Surprise. So far in the last year of actual hard work, even though that, capital campaigns, the quiet phase is a lot of talking to people and making sure that we have a community that's supporting the project. But in the last year, we can be really proud that we've raised $2.1 million in a school that doesn't nickel and dime you and doesn't act for a lot of things. We're getting ready to close the quiet phase at the end of April. We have definitive support. We need definitive support of grants and foundations to close the gap on the $10 million. So we're looking for all of our families to find a way to commit. We have 100% commitment from the staff. And for some of them, they decided to give up their Starbucks twice a week for 5 years. And that's what they could commit to, because they earn teacher money in the tech valley, and teacher money isn't like tech money. And so, that's a big commitment proportionally to their salary. We have 100% commitment from the board. They've been behind this project for a long time. And I did publish in March's Buzz, sort of the little pie charts of how we collect our money. Most of it's tuition. How we spend our money, most of it's on the children and the teachers. So this project is going to cost us more than $10 million, but $10 million to actually build the buildings. So there's sort of a little breakout of what each of those buildings cost. And then when it says Bowman East, that means this building. And so just as a refresher, in addition to all that great stuff we're doing over there, we're remodeling this building. This building was purchased by us from the Mid-Peninsula Jewish Day School, which is now Hausner. And it was built as a traditional school. When I toured the school when we were looking at buying it, they had 30 kids in rows, looking at the whiteboard, copying what the teacher wrote, like very traditional schooling. And Montessori is more about spreading out and big work, and these classrooms are really small. The most significant thing is meetings like this won't happen over here. They'll happen at the new site, and this will be the library, the whole expanse of the basement. Other significant changes is the staff lounge is going to turn into the world language labs, and so there'll be one room all dedicated to Mandarin, one to Japanese, and one to Spanish, and they'll be decorated as such. There's some other changes that are going to happen as well, where we put the children and how we shift things around, and adding a science lab to one of the empty classrooms we're not going to use. So there's some really good changes happening here. So what is this, if we're successful, what does it look like? A $10 million capital campaign means we're raising the funds and doing the grants. And so this little graph just shows you if the funds that we raise are dark orange and the grants are light orange, the more we raise in funds, the less we have to do grant writing. Grant writing is hard work. Foundations is hard. It's hard to approach them. You have to find the right match. I have a team of parents. If you'd like to join that team, they're gathering together and getting ready to do that work. But it is hard work, and it's no promise. And nonprofit schools that are private schools are less likely than if we were serving meals to homeless children without shoes. That would be more likely to get grant money. So we have to be very crafty in what we're using it for. We have good causes. Physical activity is getting kids out is on the rise, so the gym has that ability. I don't know if you read the same article, but there was this great article about why those kids in Florida are so much more outspoken about gun violence than any other kid who's ever had that happen at their school. And one of the reasons was they have an extraordinarily strong drama and music program, as do we. So there are grants for that, and that's an up-and-coming thing. The STEM lab, the IDEA lab, clearly that's a need, and there's money out there for that. And then the early childhood piece as well. So we have identified places where we can source that funds, but obviously the harder work is getting that. The capital campaign, both grants and raises and fund grants together, that $10 million together, is what we're using as sort of like the down payment or the security, the job security, to do the construction loan. And unlike, this is a common question I get, remortgages, and people know about their own homes and their own way of working. This is commercial property loans. So it works completely differently than perhaps home loans. And so it may seem like that's crazy. How can you get a construction loan on sort of invisible money? It does seem crazy to me, but that's how they do it. They consider this like when you're buying a house and they call your job to see if you really are a good employee and you're going to keep that job. That's what the capital campaign does for banks in the commercial world. It tells the commercial banks, we have buy-in from our community and we have belief that this will work. And so nobody's going to go switch schools or anything. And Mary Beth's not going to be left with one student after this is all done. The commercial loans, when we're all done building the building and we pay all the people for hammering the nails and putting in the windows, will roll into a $20 million mortgage, the rest of the mortgage on this plus the commercial, and we'll pay it off over 30 years. That does seem like putting debt on the future, but do keep in mind that when I open that preschool, and Aaron is going to be in charge of running it, that gives us 60 tuitions. So you can kind of do the math. That's a little over $1 million a year that we can use to just dedicate towards reducing that mortgage. So that's the ultimate plan. Okay, the kindergartners who are here, if you had your children in room 1 and 2, they would actually attend school over there as the eldest children in that program. That frees up 2 classrooms over here. And so we'll move lower L so they take up the whole wing down there. Upper L will come back downstairs where they used to be and where they really need to be, because it's hard for them to not be able to just go outside and write poetry or go outside and do their journal. They just have that hallway, and so it's quite complicated. It's much easier if their door can stay open and they can come and go in and out and have a little more freedom. And then middle school, which is expanding all the time, is taking over the whole upstairs. And they will have a room dedicated for each of their core subjects. A language arts room, a science room, a math room, and a cultural room. For those of you who may be hearing this before, the city of Palo Alto has a lot of issues with their neighbors, but we held community meetings with all of our community members as we went through the pre-process, and we made a commitment to only stay at 300, not just because that's palatable to the community, but because that's what's right for Montessori. The best Montessori schools stay at about 300. We also have a commitment as a staff to know every family and know every child really well. And so you can't do, there's just a mathematical formula where you can't keep track of people anymore. So, 300 kids is 600 parents and X number of siblings. It's a lot of people. So let's do some math. We've already engaged 180 people in this process. We've literally talked to everyone. I think we're down to only the new families, right, Kiara? To date, we have about approximately 74. This might be off because more donations came in today that have committed to the 2.1 million. So we did the math, and if every family committed the same amount in a sort of socialist Bowman type way, it would be $10,000 a year over 5 years. If you had that matched, it's 5 over 5, but it's really $834 a month, just to put it in perspective. And that's a lot of coffee, but if you do the teacher math, and a gift of $30K would bring us up to the 5 million. And the whole point of, we've talked about this 5 million with other families before, getting halfway to 10 is when you can go seek funds from foundations. The bare minimum of foundation approach is 100% commitment and $5 million. That's the least amount we need to be able to source funds from foundations. So if we asked all the rest of the families, the 110 families that are left, to give equally, which we know not everybody can, so this is just, imaginary math, it is about $500 a month. So it's not distasteful. It's not $5,000 a month. It's actually fairly doable for many, many people. And so we're asking you to do a couple things. So to be clever, we're blasting off with this countdown to capital campaign. And so to tee off the word blast, the B becomes become. So we would like you to become informed about the project. Do you have all the information you need? If you need more information, reach out to Kiara. Look at your family's finances. That's the ask that we're asking you to do tonight. Take a hard look in the next couple weeks of your family's finances. How can you contribute a meaningful gift? And how can you stretch that gift just a little bit further? Ask clarifying questions. If you don't know something, do ask. Ask, how can you contribute? Can you do stock? Can you match? What are the processes in place? We are all set up to match with most companies. And then set your goal, set your gift or your pledge, set it up. You can talk to Kara about how to get a pledge card. And then can you give more than that? Can you just stretch it just a little? We're only going to ask once in your lifetime at Bowman. And then talk about this. That's our other ask. Talk about it with your friends that are at Bowman. Talk about it with your friends and colleagues that aren't at Bowman. Talk about it with your childless friends and colleagues who may be successful and want to give to a good cause. Talk about it with your relatives. All of us have all done all of those things. And then do you have a foundation that maybe that gives to any of those educational causes that I mentioned, or specific causes? Because foundations give to what their mission is. Or do you have other friends you'd like to connect us with? So we're asking you to do that. That's your homework. And just like any good school, I have a paper that has all of these things. And anyway, that's all I had for you. Thanks for coming. I'm glad so many people could come.